Welcome into the official. We are going to be really transparent with you guys on this episode. The season is pretty much in the books. There's one game left. It's going to be obviously Georgia versus TCU for the Natty. But at this point, I've compiled all of the stats for running backs and wide receivers in our top 25, in the big services top 25, rivals 24/7 on three versus C2C's running backs and wide receivers. We're going to look at those two position groups tonight and compare how did we do versus how did the services do. And, there's some good, there's some bad. We'll talk about all of it. But at this point, there's no real freshman receiver or running back for that matter who is going to make a huge dent in the national title game. So feel pretty good about releasing these numbers now. Jordan Hudson, of course, for TCU may, have a nice game, but it won't affect too much of the services because of the way that we looked at it. So we're going to do that tonight. Take a look at C2C versus the other recruiting services. This is the official. Welcome in, boys. It's nice to have everybody back after a little holiday break. First episode of the new year. Everyone have a nice little respite there.
Yeah, gotta love the holidays, but it's good to be back talking about what we love, recruiting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
I have to say I feel a little refreshed myself. Definitely was a slog getting through signing day. I think the last episode we had all broadcast, 7 hours that day and then did the show. So definitely needed a little bit of a break, but we are back. We're going to be hitting the airwaves every single Thursday morning on YouTube. Saturday mornings, you can listen to the show on a podcast, but we do try to make this a little bit more of a visual show. This episode's going to be mostly talking, but generally speaking, we like to have some graphics and some clips so you can get a sense for what these players can offer. Before we get started, like and subscribe this video and to the C2C YouTube page. That helps us get into that algorithm goodness. And then also check out the website, campus2canton.com. We have tools, articles, guides. We are going to start putting out, speaking of recruiting, our freshman guide for the 2023 class, which is an all-in-one comprehensive, guide to freshman drafts and these skill position players and what we think of them. And then obviously there's multiple subscription tiers that you can choose from at campus2canton.com. So without further ado, tonight we're kind of going to just like lay it all on the line here and show how we did as a company versus the more established and obviously brand name recruiting services. So how do you guys feel before we reveal too much? The results. Are you on scale 1 to 10 satisfied or hashtag unfinished business for 2023?
I think hashtag unfinished business. I feel about a 7, but honestly, for our first year doing this, going against the seasoned pros, I would say these guys have been doing this for a long time. I think we stacked up pretty well, and I think that we're always like tweaking our processes, and I think we're going to come even better this year. We'll see though.
Yeah, I would say the same. Probably like a 6. I definitely think we could, there's areas we could improve on, but the guys that we were really in on that the services weren't, most of those guys did hit, which is something I'm pretty proud of.
Yeah, and we will talk a little bit about that, especially because with all these rankings, I used to write for a website called Razzball, and they had a guy on there who he did the Fantasy Pros, weekly rankings, or maybe it was yearly rankings, position specific for fantasy football on the NFL side. And, he was kind of obsessed with being different because he's like, what is the point of just going consensus ranks in your rankings? And then you may finish in the top 5, but like, who gained anything from that to see 5 different rankings? They're all basically the same. And so he would actually run his models or his rankings against everyone else's and come up with a boldness score is what he called it. And so I kind of learned that concept from him. Rudy Gamble is actually a really smart guy. And so I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I'm looking at our rankings versus all these other services, but I also do want to come up with a boldness score, because if we're saying, and we'll get to a few specific players, if we're saying, player X, nobody's talking about, but he is going to hit, and he goes boom, that helps people because they scoop that guy up in all of their drafts in the later rounds or whatever, knowing they could get him later, but we had him, running back 8, teaser is who I'm referring to specifically, or 7, I think. But so the differentiation, I think, really is key to hone into. So we'll look at raw results, but also just that differentiation of, are your rankings different from consensus? And I think we did well in both of those spots. Before we get to running backs, I actually want to talk about wide receivers first. This is how I started this process. So I was curious if we avoided year 1-0 better than the services, because interestingly enough, despite 5-star status, 4-star status, whatever, plenty of guys end up being year 1-0s. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it is basically a guy who doesn't meet certain very, very minimum thresholds, like 10 catches in a season, 100 receiving yards in a season. And unfortunately, those guys go on to have a much less chance of being a relevant NFL wide receiver for fantasy. So you want to avoid that year 1-0. And I was like, hey, did we do a better job than services? So let's take a quick look here. I'm going to bring this up. On 3, very impressive. In their top 10 wide receivers last year, they only had 3 year 1-0s. So 7 out of 10 avoided that. 24/7 and Campus to Canton tied with 4 top 10 year 1-0s. Rivals comes in behind at the worst with 5 top 10 year 1-0s. On 3, again, even when you expand it out to the top 25, 11 of their top 25 were year 1-0. Now, they did the best. That's still what? 40% of their, their top 25 was year 1-0. That's not good in most cases, to have a 41% like total failure rate, right? But everyone else came in at 15. So on 3, though, did really good. I mean, they did really good. I did not look at ESPN. With that being said, let's talk about a couple of the receivers before we look into boldness score for the wide receivers. What did we do right and what did we do wrong? There's a couple glaring ones. Anybody want to guess the biggest, just a total whiff on our part in the wide receivers that turned out to be a big time year 1-0?
Yeah, I'm going to guess that's probably Shetron.
Shetron was in our top 10, and he was a bust, but he was not nearly the bust that our wide receiver 3 was. David, do you remember who that was?
Oh, DJ Allen.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot he was so high.
So DJ Allen not only was a brutal year 1-0 who barely even played for Texas Christian on an obviously good team, who's in the final. He was our wide receiver 3, and we were the only site to even have them in the top 25 period of this group. So we took a stand. We said, yeah, this guy's it. It's a great situation. There's not a lot of competition except for Quentin Johnston. Turned out we were wrong. We picked the wrong freshman TCU wide receiver. I think we did have Hudson, who avoided year 1-0 in our top 25. We didn't have, DJ Allen was definitely the guy we planted our flag on. You mentioned Shetron. We had him at wide receiver 8. We were higher on him than the services. That was a miss. And then, Matt, I think you liked Denylon Morissette like I did, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I think he ended up not quite as high as you. I think he was my wide receiver 11 in my final rankings.
Right. I had him top 5, I think. And so I knew we both liked him, but we were the only site bold enough to put him in our top 25, and he busted for Georgia. Didn't really even get on the field hardly at all. But there were some good things that we did. Adam Randall, we all loved Adam Randall, and he just did squeak in, avoiding that year 1-0 in the final game. The final drive of the final game. He caught 2 passes for like 30 yards and got over 100 yards on the season. I do think there's a bit of an asterisk there. I mean, had he missed year 1-0, I think we would have had to throw him in the bucket. However, I think there's something impressive here with a guy who whether or not it was fully a blown ACL, it was a major injury in spring. He still comes back, plays the same year, and avoids year 1-0. So I mean, that's a big win to me. He's listed at 6'2", 230. I mean, he is a massive, massive guy, which is what we thought coming in. Any other follow up there? I know Matt, you liked him. David, I can't remember where you were on Adam Randall.
Yeah, I had Randall he was my number one for most of the process. I ended up moving him like late in the process to number 2 behind Luther Burden. But I mean, he squeaked it out, which it was a very nerve-wracking. It was quite the sweat for us in that final game. It was super annoying to see Cole Turner taking snaps over him. But anyways, like he got out there. He probably just wasn't himself yet. Like typically it takes a little while, like just to come back from that injury that quickly and still avoid it is probably pretty special, I feel like. At the same time, you're thinking, okay, Cole Turner's getting snaps over him. That's very strange. I think he'll be 100% next year. I think he'll get back to where we expect him to be.
Yeah, you would think he could take that and hopefully do better than, Joe Ngata. I don't know if he'll be back, but that's the role that, outside X, and then Williams will be the movable chess piece, and Cole Turner, whatever, he'll be the Slade Bolden of the offense or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, I still think Adam Randall was a pretty good call. We had him highest. Most services did have him in the top 25. I think Rivals was the only one without him at all in the top 25, so missed out on a year 1-0 avoidance. I'm proud of us. We had Aaron Anderson pretty low. We had him at wide receiver 22, still on our top 25. But he was like top 3, top 5 for most services, and he didn't do anything and now transferred to LSU. And we're also, I think,
can I pop in here? A really big Absolutely. One here that I don't know if you checked. CJ Williams, who just announced his transfer today. I don't think anybody in the crew was really very in on him. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know do you have his overall ranking on here?
Quick. Yeah, I can. You're right.
He was definitely outside of our top 10, and he, for most other services, he was like a top 5 guy.
That's right. So 24/7, he was 7. Rivals, he was 7, I believe. On 3 did not have him. We did.
On 3 was low.
70,
yeah, on 3 was
wide
low.
receiver 70 or something.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
We did put him at 12, but we were much lower than consensus. But we did have him at 12.
He was in my 20s, I believe. So I was pretty out on him.
I definitely ended up just like succumbing to he's a good route runner, but he's not. I mean, I think I'd be interested to look at year 1-0s who transfer right away after 1 year. Like, what is that?
That'd be really interesting. Bad?
Yeah. Can they find new life, or did they just pick the wrong school, or is that just really bad?
Probably
pat on the back. Yeah, probably is bad. Pat on the back for Matthew Golden. I was not nearly quite as high on him. We had him at 10. That was, I think, industry high. He avoided year 1-0. He looked great as a compliment to Nathaniel Dell, and big time wheels up in 2023 for Matthew Golden. And another guy from his former high school, right? We're high on him all of a sudden already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jalen Smith this year.
Yeah. So we'll see about that. We didn't have Kevin Coleman in our top 25. He was like top 10 consensus for most. Hard to say. I mean, we kind of didn't pick him because you couldn't even use him. I mean, he was at Jackson State. So he wasn't a year 1-0 there. Now he's going to Colorado, right? I think so. He's officially.
I don't think he did yet.
But he's in the portal. Just hasn't done it yet.
Believe so.
Yeah. Well, if he stays at Jackson State, I mean, we did the right thing to not rank him. We can't use him in our leagues. All right. So now looking at on 3, this is because on 3 we'll look at the running backs too. Like on 3 had a great year in 2022. They were high on Jordan Hudson, had him at wide receiver 2, 17 points higher than consensus. They did not have CJ Williams, like we just mentioned. They did not have Andre Green, which I think we were kind of low on Andre Green as well, but they didn't have him at all. And he was like total bust for UNC, despite not really having great wide receivers. We thought the room was going to be wide open, and he just didn't do it. They had 2 big whips. Caleb Webb for Tennessee at wide receiver 9. Nick Anderson, who went to Oklahoma, I don't think played at all, wide receiver 16. Any thoughts on those guys? Hits and misses. You want to doff your cap to on 3 for any of those?
I mean, we definitely can't judge him for the Caleb Webb. I think the three of us were all pretty high on him. Our model loved him. There's a lot to like there, and just didn't pan out for him at Tennessee. So, definitely chalk that one up as a miss for us as well.
Yeah, we didn't have him in our top 10, but yeah, we did kind of like him. I think he was might have been on my 3-star. Was he a 3-star or 4-star by the end of it?
Oh, I would imagine he. Oh, yeah. Was he? Okay. He was like my wide receiver 18 or 17 or something like that. So we're still a bit lower than on 3.
And then Andre Green, I mean, these guys who are just like these raw 6'3", 200-pound, 190-pound guys. I mean, I don't think we should put guys in a box and just say, hey, if you're a certain height and weight, you're not going to succeed. But in addition to that, we knew he was raw, freaky, athletic, and the sites loved him. I think those kind of guys must do good.
I loved him as well. I think he was my wide receiver 6. I think I was the highest on him. And he reminds me so much of Noah Rogers. So I'm really trying to skip that one this year. Go watch the tape. There. Watch him back to back. I'm just
Andre Green's slow though, isn't he? I tried so many.
How fast is Noah Rogers?
I tried so many plays with Andre Green, like even on defense, I couldn't get this guy over 20 miles per hour. That was my main concern with him, is just like the competition level he was playing against. And I mean, he's coordinated and has really good ball skills, but aside from that, I didn't really love him. But I missed on plenty of dudes anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think On 3 and C2C had the most guys that had like a lot of variability. Rivals and 24/7 were a little bit more close to the vest. Rivals, big whiff on 3 guys: Jaden Gibson, Kyle Casper, Andre Green. Casper and Gibson, they had really high, and they just did nothing. I mean, Jaden Gibson, in a room that was not really doing much, I'm not sure he had a snap. One of the most 0 of all the year 1 zeros. Kyle Casper, I don't know. I wasn't high on him, but they had him at 14. Kevin Coleman, wide receiver 9. I don't know if that's good or bad, but he did pretty well at the FCS level. They had Andre Green, wide receiver 5, so they're in your boat, Matt. And then 24/7, Isaiah Bond was ranked as an athlete. I don't know how. Some of these, there's like variability. I don't know. Should I punish a site for ranking guys an athlete, or we'll talk in the running backs ranking guys a wide receiver when he should have been a running back. I didn't know how to really do that. They didn't have Jordan Hudson around. Caleb Burton, who we dropped, I think, appropriately after injury, and he didn't look that good as a senior. They kept him at wide receiver 10. And Talon Shutter not in their top 25, but that turned out to be good for them. But Rivals and 24/7 just didn't have that many guys who were like way off the consensus. They were pretty closer to each other, which makes sense, right? Because they're the more veteran sites.
Yeah, for sure. And especially like with Rivals, where they have, they run actual off-season camps where, they get to see these guys in person. I think that's definitely a big advantage for them.
Yeah, and apparently they don't let anybody else go to these Rivals camps, only Rivals people. And so, because I was like, hey, we should go to these camps and see the receivers. We got up close and personal with the Elite 11 quarterbacks, which is great, but unfortunately not with the other position groups. So anyway, now let's talk. So we kind of talked about these variabilities, right? But now let's reveal the boldness rating for these sites. I'll put it up here. Dave, what do you think about this? I mean, On 3, so impressive here, like leaps and bounds more different, also leaps and bounds, better. So On 3 is doing something right.
Yeah, I think, and I don't even think they're intentionally being bold. I think that's just that's their evaluation. And I Charles Power is the guy that he pretty much controls the rankings over there. It's mostly other people contribute to, but it's pretty much a one-man show. And
I don't think I knew that. He does all the rankings for all the players.
I think he oversees it. I think I don't know how exactly their process, but I think he gets final say as far as I know. That's at least what I read that at one point.
Wow.
He's looking at NFL traits specifically. Like he's definitely, that's why he has guys like Cordell Russell higher than most of the services, because he's an absolute freak show. And like Eugene Wilson, he has that insane change of direction and body control. So he's looking for standout things that he thinks will, translate to the NFL. So I think that is a true. I don't think they're trying to just be different to be different. I think that's the big takeaway for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to people just in passing as the recruiting cycle wound down, and Florida has a few receivers in their top 10, so I'm very hopeful. Hopefully, they nailed it again this next year. But I talk to people like, oh, there is a sentiment like you're talking about here. There's a sentiment that On3 just wants to be different. On3 is just trying to put their name on the map and be different. And even if they are, it's working. I mean, it's not just differentness, or differentiation. It's also like they nailed it in terms of actual production and getting relevant receivers on the list. We were more different than the others, but it's much less of a gap. I mean, 6.5. And just to explain to everyone, I guess what I should do that real quick. What this means is, On3 on average had each player was 6.5 points different than the consensus between all these groups you see here. So I did the average ranking for each player, got an average, and then what On3 had versus the average for these four groups is there, and then tallied up, divided by 25 players, was 6.5 different. Now that could be plus or minus. That's why we kind of talked more specifically about, they had some guys that were really high and busted, some guys that were really low and busted. So that was good. But just different. They were different than if you just went down 24/7 or Rivals. And we were different as well with a 5.6, but not that different. We kind of were a little closer to consensus with 24/7 and Rivals. Rivals was the least different and also the worst, which is kind of interesting. That's like the worst combination there. I think one take home as we head into 2023 and with our final rankings, and then look towards 2024, which we will start doing before we know it in like March or whatever. Really just that will be the main content is 2024. So we're going to start this next process. I think we should be comfortable being different. And I think we are as a group. I mean, I think as we talk about guys, we are not afraid to take a stand. And, DJ Allen did bust. But, bold, I think you do get rewarded for being different. If you see something and we as a group see something or Matt's model pops, we should run with it. Because, as we've said, the reason we started this show, the reason we started doing this as a company, I think, is because we're like, there's got to be room for improvement. Right? I mean, these hit rates are not very good. And so there's got to be a way to do it better. And we're obviously, it's on our first year. We're still working things out, but I think we can take that from there. Any other thoughts on like the boldness and how On3 was just like totally dominant?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's interesting, that they did were as accurate as they were with how bold they were. That's certainly very impressive. And I think I definitely don't think we hold back at all. With trying to not be different, and it's not that we're trying to be different either. It's just we all have our all individual tastes and what we think projects the best to the next level, and we're just gonna roll with that.
Yeah, but I do think we did pretty well. I was pretty pleased with the results there, to at least be hanging in with these groups and being a little bit different and still hanging in. It's not like we, shot our shot and totally missed. So moving on to running backs here. I had to do this a little different. We don't have a year 1-0 equivalent for running back. So what I just did was total production for the top 25. What set of top 25 running backs produced the most in 2022? And you'll see here On3 once again is number one in touches, number one in yards, and second place in TDs. Rivals had more TDs at 93 total out of their top 25 running backs, and tied for most touches with their top 25 running backs. But On3, I mean, just lapping the field with total yards, which I think probably is the best, maybe the best number to look at there. As we know, touchdowns are a little bit fluky. But we finished in second place on total yards. So I like that for us more than Rivals. 24/7 had a bad year, as you can see here. But everybody, we were right there neck and neck with On Three and Rivals. 1690 touches for On Three and Rivals, 1662 for Campus to Canton. On three, 9,304 or 9,334 yards. We were sitting at 9,150. So we were about 150 yards off of On Three and slightly ahead of Rivals. So right there, jockeying for position with them, and touchdowns were a little bit less as well. So, I think once again, pretty good results here. And 24/7 for context, who, all due respect to 24/7, they're kind of like, well, Rivals is probably the godfather of recruiting. 24/7 is a close second place there. But man, 1,400 touches. They were like 200 less touches in their group of 25, 7,900 yards, 1,000 yards less than the rest of us, and 80 touchdowns. Just really, really had a rough year at running back prospecting there. Any of this jump out to you? Obviously, On Three, once again, pretty impressive.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to argue against what On Three's doing. I mean, at wide receiver and running back, they're the most bold and they're the most accurate. Like, what else can you say about it? And I think this really is just showing, it's kind of like the new guys in town are kind of, stepping it up here, because we've been, above Rivals in 24/7 and the other one as well. So I think maybe, it's our willingness to use different methods and different ways to look at things and measure things that's really separating, these newer companies apart.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we always wanted to do when we started was just say, let's throw everything against the wall and see if it sticks, and I think we are continuing to do that. Let's get into some individual players here. Obviously, C2C was carried by the one, the only, Quinshon Judkins. We were the only group who had them even, certainly the only had him in the top 10. He was our 7. On Three did sneak him in at 25. And if they had not done that, if they had not had him, arbitrary cutoff, top 25, I just picked a number. But if they had not had him in their top 25, I think we would have been,
should have did top 20.
1. Yeah. yeah, I should have. But Judkins was incredible. If you don't remember, he had like almost 1,700 yards. I believe he had like 15, 16 touchdowns. 1,700 yards, 17 touchdowns. I mean, just monster season. Who could have possibly seen it coming? We thought he'd be good. I don't think even Matt Bruning, who was the number one Quinshon Judkins conductor of the hype train, I don't think he would have said he thought that season was in store. And so then we, that was our big one. We talked a little bit off air. Who was a guy that you guys were high on? We had in our top 10. We were bold, and we don't know if it was a hit or a miss.
Yeah, that would be Andrew Paul. It's pretty disappointing. All signs sounded like he was doing well early, in the summer and the spring, and then before the season started, he tore his ACL and never get to know now. And they're bringing in more running backs in this class. So does he transfer out? We don't know, but I don't think we can really make any judgment there on him yet.
Yeah, probably not. David, any thoughts on Paul? Where did you land on him? I think we all ended up pretty excited by the end of it all.
Yeah, I remember Austin scolded us too. That was the guy that Austin found initially, and then he told us that we got too high on him. But he ended up making my top 10 at the position. None of the service ended up coming around on him, which is very. We definitely went out on a limb, like you're saying that we should. I felt pretty good about it.
He was performing, right? We had.
Yeah.
I remember we talked on the show. He was getting reps in front of Branson Robinson.
I loved his film. His production was really good. We got a good mile per hour on him. He had good size. Like, he was just checking all sorts of boxes. I was pretty confident about him. Obviously, the injury hurts. We'll see what happens. Georgia just keeps cycling in new talent. It's just, and how's he going to look? Coming off that injury, it's tough to say. But that one kind of hurts a little bit because I did feel good about it. We'll see how it turns out.
One guy who just had a great bowl game that we were very low on. He did make our top 25, 25, but we did have him very low, which I think was a mistake, is Javante Barnes. Do you remember either one of you? I mean, I don't remember thinking much of him at all. I mean, I was just kind of like, oh, he's a guy, like whatever. He's going to Oklahoma. He's a guy behind, Eric Gray or whatever. But where do you think we went wrong on Javante? Or do you think maybe he just lucked into some carries and he may not necessarily be that great? Any thoughts on Javante Barnes?
I think there was limited film on him to begin with, but he was a guy that I kind of liked in the beginning, and then everyone kind of said they didn't like the film, his film isn't amazing. But the reason why I liked him initially was just because he was a 200-pound back that had a 11-foot broad jump, so I knew for sure that he was a super explosive, athletic guy that a coaching staff would potentially like right away. I don't know if he was like super efficient as a runner though, and now Sawchuk, he got some momentum towards the end of the season there. It looks like he added weight. Some of these guys that run track, they were like really small coming in, and then all of a sudden they kind of like blow up a little bit. So he looked pretty big to me, not like super big, but so maybe Sawchuk ends up passing him anyway. It's so early; it's tough to tell exactly.
It is, and I mean, he wasn't like. Go ahead. He wasn't.
And Oklahoma was bringing in two other pretty highly rated backs in this class as well, with Caleb Hicks and Dalen Smothers.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah. Almost like Hicks is the new Javante and Smothers is the new Sawchuk a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, I just don't remember too much special. And it's not like he had a Quinton Judkins season, but he had like 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's pretty good. We were high on Ramon Brown. We also were talking off air. We pretty much, I think this was a strategic error. We put Terrence Gibbs, who was a 4-star before getting injured, and then wound up at Georgia Southern. Didn't even play as a freshman at Georgia Southern. Who knows? Maybe he'll recover from that injury, but pretty rough to have him in the top 16. And he was running back 16 and just gave us a 0. So that hurts. Andrew Paul, we took a stand, got unlucky with injury. Terrence Gibbs was probably not smart. I think we could have been really close to on 3 or better had we, maybe if we had simply just said, hey, let's not put Terrence Gibbs and anybody else. Just put anybody else because he's not going to play. On 3 had a few pretty good ones. They had Caleb Johnson for Iowa, who ended up having a pretty good season, 800 yards by the end of it all. And then this was the other site that had Janty in their top 25, and we had Ashton Janty in our top 25 as well. I was shocked to see that on 3 they didn't copy us, but they had him so high, and he had he flirted with 1,000 yards, as the B back behind George Halani. So big, tip of the hat there.
Yeah, he's actually, I was very high on Caleb Johnson. I don't believe my running back. I wasn't as invested in other positions last year. This year I went full in everywhere, but I don't believe my running back rankings made it into last year's guide. But I was very high on Caleb Johnson, David Martinez, and what was the other one? I just had the other
Brown
one.
is another
Samuel
one.
Brown. Yep, that was it. I was high on those 3.
Yeah,
all 3
Samuel
being
Brown
big size
played.
speed guys.
Yeah, Brown played this year. I was trying to see where we kind of cut off that top 25 for us. Caleb Johnson wasn't really that close. And I think I lost the battle because I was really, really high on Damian Martinez as well.
I remember you were too, yeah.
And I think no one else really agreed with us.
I think Austin was a big time hater. Not to throw him under the bus, but I'm pretty sure he scolded us once.
I'm pretty sure all the 200-pound, 21-mile-per-hour guys pretty much. I mean, those guys are kind of ready to go, I feel like, from a size athletic standpoint. I think the only guy that, was Justin Williams, which I think we had questions about him as a pass catcher and maybe his blocking. I don't know if that's why he didn't get on the field. Plus, the other freshman was pretty good, too. So.
Yeah, and the only group on 3 might have been the only one with him. He was Dylan Sampson, and he had 400 yards, 6 touchdowns. And on 3 is the only one that had Sampson. They had Caleb Johnson.
He was teeny tiny. There's no way we would have nailed him. He was like 180 pounds listed. Yeah. We weren't going to have him high.
True. And, I think you bring up a good point, David. Like, maybe we need to keep track of these, like, 6 feet, 200, and runs of 21 miles an hour. Just period. Just check those
I've,
three boxes.
I've got a list of them.
Yeah. I mean, they did pretty well last year. And I remember Caleb Johnson. You talked about him on a 3-star show because I believe he was a 3-star going to Iowa. And like, that's a great spot. I mean, just for production. And he ended up doing great. And then they did have a big bust on 3. Anybody know who Maurice Edwards is?
Yeah.
Does that even ring a
Was he Purdue back, right?
Vanderbilt, but
Oh,
he didn't.
Vanderbilt.
No,
close.
I think you're thinking it was another gold and black team. I think it was Wake
Yeah.
Forest.
Okay.
No. It was Vanderbilt because I had him on our sleeper show because he's insane. He's like a 200-pound guy that's really athletic, but he didn't.
Yes, you're right, Vandy.
Something happened with his enrollment. I don't know.
I just remember the colors. I don't remember his game at all.
He got kicked out of school or something happened. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, that's tough. I didn't realize he was like, had academic issues or whatever, but they had him in their top. He was 16 for them, and I mean, obviously a complete zero across the board. But yeah, they were bold. I mean, AJ Allen, who we like, David, you and I at least. He had him at running back 5. Like that is crazy bold. We did like him. I think he did not make it in our top 25 after all, but we did like him and he produced pretty well. And hopefully he'll recover from his ACL and,
He had a
be a
broken
value
collarbone.
next year. Oh, it was a collarbone. Well, that's even better
Mm-hmm.
for future healing up and all that. And then they listed Raleek Brown, who this is a guy I think we should maybe talk about, touch on Raleek Brown. They had him as a wide receiver. I didn't really know how to, if that should be penalized or not. I don't remember where they even had him. I think he was like wide receiver in the teens or 20. Obviously, he's a running back. He's playing running back for, but also catching the ball. He's a nice dual threat weapon. Where did we go wrong? Did we discount size too much?
Probably, maybe a little bit. I mean, it's his NFL projections are still kind of bleak. I mean, he's primed to be an awesome returner at the next level, but he's going to have to move to wide receiver at some point if he wants to, or put on a bunch more weight. I mean, what's he listed at now? 180. Last I checked.
He's like 5'7", 5'8".
And when you're that height, it's going to be much harder to pack on 20 pounds than like a 6'1" running back. So it's just hard to project him to the NFL level still, even with that speed.
Yeah, he looked good though. About 600 yards, 5 touchdowns. We were very low on them. On 3, didn't have him as a wide receiver or running back at all. Had him as a wide receiver. I don't think he was even in our guide. We just like didn't know what to do at all. Receiver, running back, and we just like skipped him altogether.
That's surprising.
But David, you think he's hashtag good at football? It seems like he proved it this year. And that's a great offense.
Yeah, I think we faded him too hard probably. Like I don't think he should have. I think he wasn't he like composite running back 2 or something on 24/7, which is like if you're gonna have a guy that high, you got to think about NFL. So I think maybe we overvalue weight to some extent. Like we'll probably get like 5 like NFL relevant players towards the top of each class, something like that. So like I'm not going to be putting a 180-pound guy in my tier 1 or anything like that. But like after that, it's kind of a free reign. Just pick good football players, and he's good at football, so probably faded him a little too hard. And he had a good freshman year, and he'll add some more weight, but he's never going to be some Devi asset really.
Yeah, that's a good point. We talked about this in the last few days. Outside of like the top guys you might want to put on your list, top 5, whatever. I mean, they should probably meet some height weight requisite because those are going to be your Devi, your really banking on NFL future. But after that, like it's kind of a grab. You're not like you're running back 15. You're not banking on NFL future at that point anyway. So at least not relevant to NFL future. So like maybe we should be swinging on these like young, fast or these really fast, speedy types or who can catch pass and things like that. And for 2023, at least, I think I am bumping those guys up, not all the way to the top, but being way more open to a 5'8", 5'9", 180-pound guy, being really good. We've seen that a lot this year. Devin Achane, Keaton Mitchell, and then obviously the freshman Raleek Brown, Gavin Sawchuk we just mentioned. I mean, these guys can do
Richard Reese killed it this year.
Oh, yeah. He was another true freshman. He's real small, like 170, 175.
Mhm.
So, all right, let's touch on Rivals, who was really good. Just as a reminder here, they tied in touches, did not have quite as many yards, but also had the most touchdowns of the group in their top 25. And that's because they were the highest on Trevor Etienne, who really was very good for Florida. He definitely was their running back two from the start of the season. He had 8 or 9 touchdowns, which adds up when a lot of people have guys with 2, 3 touchdowns. That was a big guy to have in their top 10. Trevor Etienne, he impressed me too. I mean, what do you guys remember? I remember he just looked kind of slow, a little bit pudgy, and showed up in Gainesville ready to play. And he basically looked good from the first practice. I mean, I remember reports saying that he was like very good in returning kickoffs. Where do we miss on him?
Yeah, I would say like 2 guys that really surprised me were him and Katron Allen, where they apparently started moving, much better than how they looked on film. Their senior or junior films, whichever ones we had available for them. Especially Allen, where with the late weight loss, where we can explain that. Not so much with ETN. That one really shocked me. I didn't see the standout ability like his brother did on his high school tape. It just the juice just didn't really seem to be there. So, but I guess we were overlooking more of the technical aspects of his running too, and he is actually a pretty good athlete. I think I've timed him at over 21 miles per hour in college. So it's just something we just didn't see.
Yeah, I agree. He didn't look. I mean, watching him this year, he's a good runner. He's good feet. Keeps his weight under him so he can spring and kind of make those moves. He's just a really tough guy to tackle. You can never really get a square angle on him as a defender. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he looked different. And great point on Katron Allen, who we haven't really mentioned because in terms of being different, he was in everybody's top 25. Some people had him top 10, some had him in the 15. But another guy for him and Nick Singleton combined for over 2,000 yards as freshmen. They both hit 1,000. Super impressive from that Penn State freshman running back room. But yeah, Allen, he wasn't different. Everybody had him, but he was another one that just like I remember we talked about on the show. Lost 15, 20 pounds, and I guess that's what he needed. So kudos to Rivals. They had Jalen Glover in their top 25. I know we talked about him, at least in our Slack. I know he was on our radar. He did not make it into our top 25, but he had a pretty decent season for Utah. And then 24/7 didn't really have anybody that were that different. They had Raleek Brown up at the top like Rivals did. They did not have Justin Williams in their top 25. I think there was maybe the only site that did not have Justin Williams, so good on them. They missed out on that bust. Otherwise, not a lot of difference there. So with that being said, the boldness for running backs was generally tighter. Remember, On3 had a 6.5 boldness rating for receivers, only 5.5 for running backs. So the whole group was a little tighter for running backs. We were 5.1. So again, a little bit different. I like that for us. Obviously, Quinshon Judkins was our crown jewel. But otherwise, I like that we were different again and did that, for both position groups. But On3, what can you say? Both positions, they were the most different and the most production. Like, hats off to On3, everybody. And that is On3 specific, not consensus. I think I'm just going to stop looking at 24/7 consensus or On3 really when I'm mining the deep guys. I'm just going to go to just to get names.
Well, that's what I do. On3, just go to their normal rankings. That's how I find all my sleepers too. Well, not all of them, but because Twitter.
Yeah, and to be fair,
still.
we're not. We got to get the names from somewhere. We are not copying those rankings from those websites, but that's just a place to get names, and then we go look at our own film and all that.
And we have we've ironed out our own process for finding brand new guys that aren't on services now too.
Yeah, you guys have done a lot of work. I know David. You've hit, you've come up with a lot of different search terms on Twitter to find guys and guys who are getting new offers and hashtag blessed to receive, all those tricks of the trade that we're learning. But yeah, so I mean, all things considered, I'm happy. I'm happy with how we did. Like I said, I think you guys said at the beginning 6 or 7 out of 10 in terms of your, happiness at how it all shook out. And I'd say I'm right there too, but definitely hashtag one last ride, unfinished business for 2023. We need to get out there. And hopefully we'll crush it once again and then get started on 2024. So looking forward now, we're going to start wrapping up the 2023s. We're going to have the 3-star show like we did last year, where we only talk about some 3-stars that we like. We're going to have, I think this year, I really want to do a G5 spotlight, and we're going to probably have to wait maybe till signing day, because I think those G5 teams will start getting some names, who may be unranked right now or really, really far down. And so we'll have to see who ends up signing with all the G5 schools, but that'll be fun. We got a couple things cooking, so stick with us. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure. Thanks for, embarking on this journey in this year. And I think we did a great job, and looking for even better results coming forward.
Absolutely.
All right, for David and big wide receiver guy, this is Alfred for Campus to Canton, and this has been The Official.